Afternoon, everybody. Hey, before we start, we could have a good chance here to have your questions asked of our Major League Baseball player panel here, our ESPN analysts as well. So if you like, there are questions that you can put to the back, and we can leave a lot of time. Would you like that? You guys want a nice question and answer session? Get your questions. You can go in the back. And
yes, you do.
And yeah, right back there. Yeah, right in the back, and you can ask your questions, and we'll leave plenty of time, and then you can ask the questions that you like. So let me introduce our panel first. Again, in a sabermetric sense, since World War II, adjusted ERA, fifth best starting pitcher, tied with Tom Seaver and Bob Gibson, Curt Schilling.
All right.
That's minimum 3,000 innings. You all know you're on Play Index. You'll do that. In this room, by the way, Curt, if you could make the Hall of Fame voting panel here, you know, it's done.
Yeah, if really smart people got the vote, I might be in.
Yes. And quickly. Also with us today, ESPN Sunday Night Baseball analyst, longtime Baseball Tonight and Sports Center veteran. I got to work with him for a number of years, and I mentioned, unfortunately, the sabermetric revolution came just after he finished with a .397 career on base percentage. His OPS plus, at bat for at bat, is right there with Al Kaline, Orlando Cepeda, Todd Helton, Billy Williams. Ladies and gentlemen, John Kruk. See, sabermetrics are kind when you're good, John.
I'm sure you can find something to make me look like crap, too. So.
But we won't do that here. Our other panelist, 9-year Major League outfielder, another player who could benefit from a media that appreciated defensive metrics at the time. He was a 4-win player 1 year back before we used that vernacular, showing the value of a player who could run and field and hit. He's written an outstanding book, The Game from Where I Stand, ESPN's Doug Glanville. Hey, Curt, let me start with you because I know people will always be bringing up that, well, you know, players today, they have the iPads, they're looking at video, they're doing all this, there's so many things out there, and I'm always thinking, well, this is what Curt Schilling was doing with his notepad, right? Tell us about, now it's not all that long ago, but tell us about what you tried to do in developing a methodology to study the opposition.
Well, first off, you got to imagine the 1993 clubhouse in Philadelphia with, you know, guys like him, and it was very old school. So they were really, really excited to see me wanting to watch video.
Depending on what video it was.
Yeah. But I can remember, for me, on-base percentage was such a big statistic from the time I was in the minor league as a pitcher. I tried to get a few. I always thought that the better hitters weren't the guys that a lot of people talked about in some ways. So what I started to do, it came from a night we were playing in San Diego, and Tony Gwynn went 5 for 5. And they asked him after the game about the at-bats, and he said, well, you know, I knew everything that Andy Ashby had pitched. He said, I knew everything Andy was going to throw, so, you know, I just kind of went up there and executed my game plan. And I'm pitching the next night, and I'm thinking, okay, hold on a second. Not only is he athletically one of the greatest hitters that ever lived, but he knows everything I'm going to throw before I throw it. That's going to be a problem for me. So I started to look at video and started to prepare. Now, what I used to do when I first started in Philly in 1995, I had a VCR, and every hitter in the big leagues that I would watch had a VCR tape. So when we traveled, I had a little carry bag, and I had this enormous bag of videotapes that I would have to go through one by, because I had to break down the game tape, and it took time. And then actually the next year I had helped some guy write some software that I could, basically he would video the game, put the game into my software and send me the disc the next day, and then I could break it down and watch it.
Can you imagine what it's like now? I mean, when you see players, what they're doing now.
I mean, to be honest with you, one of the big reasons I think that, in addition to a lot of other big things, Theo Epstein and the Red Sox and sabermetrics was one of the main reasons I went to Boston, because Bill James had written me a letter, because I came out and said that, you know, who wants to pitch in Fenway over Arizona, not knowing that Arizona's way, way more hitter-friendly than Fenway Park. But Bill James wrote me a letter saying that, and I was like, oh, okay. So I got over that fear, and then when I saw how much assistance the organization gave its players, that was huge for me.
Yep. Doug, what about you? Coming out again, you have an engineering degree. So did your two worlds morph at a certain point, or were you always thinking, maybe one discipline could involve the other?
Well, yeah, no question about it. I mean, there's no doubt that, you think about, as Curt was talking about, the game preparation, that became more and more important through video. And I played with Curt for a while when he had already had his hard drive, and he was looking at sequencing. So I learned a lot from watching pitchers sort of get ready for games. And that's something that's always interesting in the communication in the locker room. I noticed there wasn't always a lot of communication between pitchers and hitters directly. It might be like an ego war a little bit, but it's like, all right, well, I don't want to talk to Curt because I'm giving away my secrets. He's giving me his secrets. But yet you actually can learn quite a bit across these lines. So I think over time, I sort of defined ways to sort of match the on-field to some of the way you prepared through the metrics. And I was very fascinated, particularly on defense. I knew that was much more where my value. And I remember Curt saying to me one time, I was struggling offensively. He's like, don't worry about it, just catch everything. Just keep catching everything out there. So, you realize that the value was there. I was a little bit before my time in the sense of how it was going to be quantified, but it was something I became passionate about. Now, when I get ready for games, I'm very much paying attention to defensive metrics.
John, when you were studying tendencies of pitchers, like what was part of the study, or was there a? I don't ask, was there a study? What type of study did you do to try to figure out how to have success?
I called Tony Gwynn. Tony and I came up together in the minor leagues, and he was the first player that I heard of that was using video and watching pitchers. And in the minor leagues, you didn't have that luxury. It was just see it and hit it. But as he progressed into the big leagues, and I was still in the minor leagues, he was telling me about this video and how now he can watch every pitcher. I'm like, oh, great. Give me something to do at night instead of going out in Las Vegas. That's probably not going to happen. But when I did get to the big leagues, we were playing the Reds, and they had a left-handed pitcher came in the ninth inning, and it was a runner on second, 2 outs. And Tony was hitting second, I was hitting third, and he said, my rookie year, he got me 2-2 and threw me a slider. And that was like 4 years ago, 5 years prior. And he said he threw me a slider, and I rolled over. He said, I'll get to 2-2, and you don't have to worry about hitting. I'm like, holy crap. Oh, yeah, it must be easy. And lo and behold, he got a 2-1 count. Guy threw him a fastball about a foot outside, and Tony swung and shanked it over the third base dugout. And he turned around and looked at me in the on-deck circle smiling. And I'm like, can't be that easy. And lo and behold, he threw a 2-2 slider. He hit a base hit in the left center field. Game over. And I said, that's just, I said, you're just a lucky guesser. And he goes, no, it was preparation, because I watch every pitcher before we play a series on how they pitch me throughout my entire career. So I get a feel for what they're doing. I'm like, man, you got a lot of free time, man. But, he was my scouting report when I was with the Phillies, because when the Padres would come east, they'd go to Montreal, New York, and then they'd come to us, and Tony would tell me about every pitcher. Like, this is how he's working me. This is what he's trying to do. I said, what about this young kid they brought up? Oh, he's going to try to do this to you and do that to you. I'm like, holy. So I didn't need videotape.
What do you see, and any of you, again, you're calling games, what have you seen recently as far as the level of preparation? All the things, right, that only a rare player would do on, as for either they're looking at iPad or video or study. What's the state of the art right now? What have you seen?
The iPad. I mean, everyone gets all this data fed to them from the organization. And iPad, you just go in the clubhouse, you see, probably 10 players on their iPad studying that day's pitcher and tendencies and shifts if they shift them and all that stuff. And that's, to me, where the game has changed, because, Curt mentioned our Phillies teams. We prepared in other ways for games. iPads weren't a part of that preparation. But, yeah, I mean, that to me is where the game's changed. And, when you watch pitchers now, it seems like every team has 5 or 6 guys that are rushing out from the bullpen or in their starting rotation to throw 100. When we played, there was probably 4 or 5 maybe that threw 100.
In the league.
Yeah, in the league that threw 100. And, that's where the game has changed. And I talked to Jim Thome about it, and he said the thing that's different from when he first came up to when he was in his latter years of playing was pitchers aren't afraid to walk you now. And I said, what? And he said, they'll throw you a 3-2 breaking ball, 3-2 slider, a 2-0 changeup. He said, back when we first started, 2-0, 3-1, you were getting a fastball somewhere. And so he said, hitting has become a lot more difficult because, you know, they look at the numbers. 3-1, 2-0, you throw a fastball, you're going to get hit. So now they're throwing other stuff. I said, you know, people ask me, said, you wish you played in this era? I'm like, hell no. I couldn't do it. I'd go crazy.
I think there's still very much a trickle-down effect, excuse me, with regards to sabermetrics, statistics, preparation, study, and that the front office is, most of the front offices now have figured out that you don't have to have a background that on the field to be smart about the game. And I think that a lot of the technology upstairs kind of trickles down to the clubhouse as there's always to me a large delay between how the front office looks at the game and how the players look at the game, and there's always going to be that gap. But where I'm blown away and where I started to get really impressed with it was years back. I like to do a lot of stuff around the draft. I like to watch a lot of the college pitchers and assess mechanics and stuff. But I saw scouts and I saw teams using sabermetrics for college hitters and to some degree college pitchers, and it translated. You know, guys that are good on base, that are good getting on base as seniors in college, they're going to be good getting on base in the minor leagues and the big. It's just something, and it's one of those things I realize. I don't remember very many hitters who had a 302 on base percentage as a rookie and a 402 4 or 5 years later. It's right. Kind of, you are what you are for the most part, and I thought that was fascinating. Interesting.
Doug, have you seen, I mean, the players now, the way they study it, and even the way pitchers are studying it, it seems to be the advantage is obviously going toward the pitchers. Does that swing back? Is there going to be a counter strategy? Or do you think, no, we're until something is kind of changed by baseball?
Why is the advantage swinging to the pitcher?
Oh, information, since you are the originator of the action, all the information is first at your disposal to attack the weakness of the hitter.
I knew that's why I didn't like you.
You don't think so, Curt?
No,
I think so.
Well, I think no matter what, I have a very limited amount of space I can work in. The strike zone doesn't change from a size perspective. So my game plan to Dustin Pedroia is drastically different than my game plan to David Ortiz, and I have to be able to execute, 27 different game plans during a game. And I think that when you add up the possibilities of pitch sequences and pitch counts, it's in the billions. But that stuff doesn't actually process itself. It doesn't come into play until the actual event is on hand. Every hitter's going to see a fastball, no matter who's pitching. It comes to the athletically gifted and the mentally gifted as well. We're creatures of habit, just like they are. I mean, hitters think pitchers are the stupidest people on the planet, and pitchers know that hitters are. And so...
Well, do you think, the run scoring is down to like a mid-70s level. Singles are going by the wayside. Do we see that swinging back, or what do we see happening? Because the strikeouts are going up and up and up. Nothing has changed. What do we see happening?
I mean, I think the strikeouts is the big question. And I always, every time I do a game, I always, you guys would appreciate this. I have a philosophical question of the day. I always go down on the field and I ask Joe Girardi or whoever. So one of the days with the Yankees, I asked them about strikeouts. And it was interesting to hear, Cashman say, they say, well, I don't know if it's our hitters are struggling or our pitchers are that good. It's sort of trying to figure out this combination. But you just see this astronomical increase in terms of contact issues. And what's been valuable for me is doing the College World Series, like the super regionals. And for example, UVA was, a breath away from winning the national title. I watched the whole lineup, like nobody on that team pulled off. I mean, literally nobody, they were all staying inside the ball. They were all trying to make contact. They played to their stadium. So I feel like that wave that you're watching, that you're going to see some sort of correction because the strikeouts, it can't sustain itself if you're not putting a ball in play. Nothing's going to happen. And I think at a certain level, that next generation is aware of it. And it kind of coincides with the shifts, right? You're talking about, all right, if they're going to give you the whole side of the field, obviously the more well-rounded and spread out hitters are going to be able to figure out ways to beat it and diffuse it. So I think that's going to happen at some point because doing the college games, I've just seen a lot of hitters that really understand how to really stay in every at-bat right down to 2 strikes.
Will major league teams want that? I mean, I would think they would, right?
You know what? it was always a passion of mine. I always equated strikeouts and walks with baseball IQ. The better you were at it, the smarter you were about the sport. You look at that, then it's a great example. The 04 team in Boston, the 93 team, smart hitters understand that the entire game is about getting on base. And when I talked and taught young pitchers, I'd always ask a question. They would, my first question is, what's the on-base percentage of a walk? And they would look like I was asking them some sort of trick question. And finally, they'd figure out, it's 1,000. Right. Mm-hmm. Take the best hitter in the game, give him a 3-0 count, and throw a fastball. He might hit 450. He might hit 500. There's still a 50% chance of an out. And so I never ever pitched around a guy from the standpoint of trying to walk him. I tried to get him to hit a bad pitch, but to me, getting them to walking, I can't defend a walk. Not to mention it's boring, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, but I always looked at hitters. Good hitters don't strike out. Now there's exceptions to the rule. Mike Trout, I think you're going to see those numbers go down from a strikeout perspective. But I always looked at like Jim Thome. Or Reggie Jackson, he struck out like 48,000 times during his career. You take half of those strikeouts away and put the ball in play. And then you take his averages when he does put the ball in play, and the numbers are stratospheric how guys change. Again, Kruk, and you look at, you can say what you want about the physical build. The guy was an athlete. He totally got hitting from a statistical perspective before it was a big deal. And I think all good hitters get that before they get to the big leagues. Your job is to get on base.
Yeah, I think, again, I hate to bring this up, but now that we're not in the steroid era anymore, hopefully numbers go down. But I think what the steroid era also did with home runs going up and runs going up and all that stuff was situational hitting was crap. I mean, it was awful because they didn't have to. Why should I move a guy when I can might hit a home run once every 10 or 15 at bats? Why should I move a runner? If offenses want to get back to where they're scoring more runs, they're not going to do it in bunches anymore. You better do it one at a time. And that's our team in Philadelphia. I think we had 4
or 5 guys.
But we had like 6 games in a row where we scored in the first inning with maybe only 1 hit. Lenny would walk steal second. Our second hitters would move him over. I would hit a sac fly or a ground out or whatever. But we knew how to situational hit.
We had 4 or 5 guys with 100
Yeah, we had
more walks,
4 guys with over 100 walks. But we knew to get on base. We knew how to hit behind runners, move runners. You watch a game today and you see guys, second hitters, sixth hitters, they get a guy on second base, man, and no outs, and they're trying to jerk everything. And I think if the smart teams are going to be the teams that go back to that. You might have 1 or 2 guys who are power threats, and the rest are guys who are going to put it in play, move runners, and be efficient offensive players instead of having 7 bombers who can't play defense, and you're going to hurt your pitching staff. I think games going back to speed and situational hitting, and I like it better that way. The old National League game was so much better than the American League game when I got there in '95, and you had, like Buck Showalter says, you had 9 hairy guys standing on top of the plate trying to jerk everything out of the ballpark. That's not baseball.
That's great to hear. I know Rob Manfred, the new commissioner, when he was talking to Carl Ravitch, kind of dropped that one bomb and saying, possibly we could look at, implementing a ban on the shifts or something like that. We could always think about that. And it seemed like, whoa, there's got to be a counter strategy.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, hit the other way.
Hit it where they're not.
Hit the ball. Honest to God, for me, that was a frustrating thing to watch because it's almost I always felt like it was a very selfish approach. If you're hitting against the shift, hit the ball the other way. Now, I don't want to make it sound like it's easy, but these guys in the big leagues, they can do that. They do it. They practice it, learn all. You hit the ball the other way enough times, and you stop getting shifted. But guys are like, I don't want to give it. I got a chance to go deep here. I don't want to give that.
Why do you think it hasn't happened?
I had a player. I asked a player once. I said, why do you keep hitting into the shift? I said, why don't you hit a couple the other way? Move the defense around a little bit, and then it's going to open more holes. He said, the fans don't come to pay a ticket to see me try to hit a single the other way. They come to see me hit a homer. I said, yeah, but out of 600 bats, you hit 35. What about the other 565 at bats? That you're frickin' striking out or popping up or rolling over to the short right fielder. I said, especially you're playing in Philly, your ass better win because they don't care if you hit 40 homers and you lose.
I think there's some fallout. He mentioned the PEDs, steroids. I think that's kind of a fallout because the trade-off used to work, right? You could hit 50 home runs, 45. Now the sort of same equation is 23. It's not worth it. I mean, look at all these guys like Baez and guys that, not really getting the big reward of home runs, but getting the 100. And I mean, the guy had 92 strikeouts and he was up for like 2 months or something. So, and I often wonder, you talk about getting on base and obviously how critical that is. But is there a relationship between being so passive, because everybody's got to take a pitch and, I got to try to walk. And when you sort of try to walk, you find yourself actually in bigger holes. So if it's not your game, like as Curt mentioned, it's hard to sort of manufacture and create this environment where you're, okay, well, I'm trying to walk here. I mean, I was a leadoff hitter for forever, and I was like, all right, I got to walk, I got to take pitches, and then the first pitch of the game is right down the middle. And Curt, knows what I'm talking about. So, I think that's going to be a very interesting shift because it's almost like the reality has to kick in that these home runs are not coming. They're not coming with the frequency compared to the strikeouts that you're giving up.
I think the pitch count has gotten hitters into worse hitting counts because, like Doug said, they are taking pitches. We had I'll bring back to Little League. My son was playing a couple years ago in a championship game, and they're like, well, this kid's the best pitcher. We can't hit him, so just take a bunch of pitches, hopefully keep the game close. And I said, man, you can knock his ass out by getting runs. First pitch fastball, get a base hit, put more pressure on him, and that's what we did. We ended up scoring 16 runs off of him, and the kid was out by the second inning after throwing 30 pitches, but he gave up 10 runs because we swung at everything, and he didn't know what to do about it. And I think that's the issue you have. Like, I love Jason Worth, but last year in the postseason against the Giants, he was taking first pitch fastball right down the middle. And you do that against Madison Bumgarner, you could put your head between your legs and kiss your rear end goodbye because he's going to bury you. And I kept saying it on the air, he's got to start swinging at the first pitch just to make them throw him something different on the first pitch. But he didn't, and he went, I think, 1 for 18 or something in the 5 games or something like that. It was awful.
Well, you know what? I just want to. I'll close the book on the PED thing. As someone that
took them.
Yeah,
no, they didn't work.
No, they didn't. If I did, but I would tell you based on what the conversation. The one thing I heard from everybody was they don't help you hit a baseball, and from everything that I know in talking to people that did them, the enormous advantage for me in baseball is soreness, fatigue, and all the things that go because it's an incredible grind. The schedule is. When you show up on September 1st and I'm dragging ass on the mound trying to get a pitch over the plate and you're April fresh, the advantage is immeasurable. And that was what I understand a lot of the guys did was for recovery, for bounce back. So it did help them. It helped you play the game. I don't think Jose Canseco makes the big leagues without it. And he was a 40-40 player. So don't let anybody tell you that was an anomaly because I think that's a load of crap.
If you get drafted to play baseball, you have superior hand-eye coordination to most normal people. Now, you add abnormal strength to that with that hand-eye coordination. I'm surprised that a pitcher or third baseman didn't get killed. That's my shock in this whole thing. Because when you put that together, superior eyesight, which HGH helps with eyesight. People didn't know that. We had a big seminar a few years ago up at ESPN about, and we had all these drug people come in, and they couldn't give us any, but they could talk about it. But HGH gives you superior eyesight, and steroid. Hey, I tried. It all went right to my stomach for some reason, just kind of festered in there. But superior eyesight, and then the steroids give you superior strength. Put those things together with hand-eye coordination that you had already, good luck to the pitchers. And that's, then pitchers started doing it to try to combat that. And, then the game got out of hand, and we kind of just sat there and watched it. And then finally, thank God, they did something about it.
Has the culture changed enough now? Doug, maybe start on that, because, again, it has to be within the culture of baseball saying, wait, that is not okay. As John said, we kind of watched it. It kind of came up where the big guys were doing it and took control of it. Has that culture changed?
I mean, well, certainly the policy is considerably stronger. You see the way that they kind of 180 now to get this policy in place. And, there's a lot of testing. There's a lot of testing, and people are aware of it. I think the numbers are certainly, sort of reflecting that reality. And you talk about the All Me campaign, Taylor, with Taylor Hooton and the foundation. You realize that there's trying to have this movement now with people talking about just playing natural and just having, sort of what you have. And my career changed dramatically. In the middle of my career, all of a sudden, center fielders were expected to hit 35 home runs. I mean, it was like instantaneously. And so you realize that, the trajectory, just to stay long enough. I always think of a generation of ball players for about 5 years. And all of a sudden, there's this culture shift. It might be stolen bases are emphasized, home run is whatever it is. But that home run, all of a sudden, Andrew Jones or whoever these guys had to hit, that changes your career instantly, no question.
Isn't it ironic that the two teams that got into the World Series, and of course the Giants eventually won, were teams that didn't hit a lot of home runs, but they ran the bases well. Even though the Giants didn't have a lot of speed, they ran the bases well. They went first to third, and of course the Royals with that speed they had. And I think that's where the game's headed. And I love it. I love that type of baseball when you have some guy who's probably wouldn't have hit 220 in the big leagues, all of a sudden hitting 30 homers and hitting balls out of the ballpark, and makes a pitcher's life so much more difficult. Now it's more strategy, and the managers have to be smarter with their teams, and that's why I think you saw the overhaul in Atlanta this year. They've realized that 5,000 strikeouts isn't going to work, and I think you're going to see other teams, and you're going to see players who are good players, jump from team to team, hoping that they can figure out a way to change their approach at the plate. It's going to be fun to watch.
I don't think the culture's changed because I think people got caught. I think had they not gotten caught, they'd still be doing it. I mean, a guy like Melky Cabrera, where's the danger? He got $40 or $50 million after getting caught. And to be fair, I think all of it, the blame falls squarely on the players and the Players Association. We had a chance to fix it, and we didn't do it, and that's on us. But at the same time, the fans and the media loved every ounce of it. You look at
and the owners.
Well, the owners always did, but when you look at '94 and how bad that lockout was for baseball, and then you go fast forward to Cal Ripken's streak, and what other thing? Sosa and McGuire's home run chase. That kind of gave a rebirth to the game, and everybody. There were people, that were writing some articles around the periphery saying, "Hey, this is kind of weird," and you're looking at spring training, and guys are showing up, and it's. Hey, who'd we sign? And it's like, that was the little minor league second baseman last year. He's got like 3 foreheads, and so again, I don't know that the culture's really
didn't know
changed.
Dwayne Johnson could play second base, but look, we got him. They're huge, man.
Let's shift gears a bit. Pace of play is a big emphasis this year. What are our thoughts on baseball as a sport, as a media entertainment property? Is pace of play something that should be emphasized and changed?
Well, they say there's no clock, and so I think they call it a timer, right? So they came up with some other name for it. So, there's no question that with all the data, and this is sort of part of the sabermetrics revolution, right? You're also paying close attention to these other factors. Time, how does it all play into it? And certainly, Kurt, you were pretty quick on the mound.
Yeah.
But I played with a guy named Steve Traxel. And you talk about glacial on the mound.
He was the American version of Daisuke.
Oh, man. But, Mark Grace used to scream at him from first base, "Hurry up! Hurry up!" So, you realize that there are some elements of just getting, rhythm, and David Ortiz, stepping out of the box. So, it's insane.
I would ask you, and you guys both know this, and I would be interested to see the data on this. I guarantee you, and there's always exceptions to the rule, but I would guarantee you that the upper echelon of pitchers in the big leagues have a much quicker tempo than the guys at the bottom, because so many things. First of all, the umpire hates your guts if you're slow, right? I mean, that's not a small thing.
And your defense hates your guts.
Your defense gets in April and in July when it's freezing, and July when it's baking. The last thing you want to do, it's like football. You don't want to have your defense on the field for 48 minutes. Mm-hmm. So good pitchers learn. Mark Burley, guys, wonder how some guys get you out with tempo because they don't have the stuff to get you out. But good pitchers, for the most part, were guys that work fast.
So what's the best way to do that? For pitcher and hitter, what's the best way to speed things up?
Well, listen, the sport is driven by revenue, right? I mean, if you look at the game times, the television, and God bless them for the money they put in the sport, but that the commercial breaks and all this stuff is dictated by the people paying the bills. I mean, for me, the beautiful thing about baseball, and it makes it tough to watch, I get it, was the timelessness of it. You could play, and we did, 6-hour game, Red Sox-Yankees was kind of normal. But, I just never, it doesn't fit. It doesn't work. A clock on the baseball field, to me, doesn't work.
How about even what they're doing, which is keep your foot in the box? Like from what I've seen, when you watch some, I don't want to say like old tapes. I don't mean old tapes. I mean 1970s. It seemed like the ball went by, you stayed in the box, you tap the plate, you get back up, and you bring your right. I mean, didn't it used to happen like that?
I know some guys
Mike Hargrove
have already paid their fines for the year. I know some guys that wrote 6-figure checks to the league and said, "I don't care, fine me," because they're going to do what they do. So. It's not going to do. I don't think it's going to do a whole lot until they actually make it
mandatory.
Yeah.
Forget the fine. You're out. That's the only way. You have to get pitchers to work quicker. I was watching a spring training game, and every time they would come back to commercial, the guy was in the box, the pitcher's in his windup, and it was beautiful. It makes our job easier too, because we don't have to fill with some crap we might say and get in trouble. But like we had a guy, Terry Mulholland. Curt was real quick. Terry Mulholland would come out and throw 3 warm-up pitches, and he's good. You're like, how many do I need? I know I'm going to throw about 120 pitches. Why do I need 8 between innings? And he'd stand on the mound, and we're all still throwing the ball. He's standing around watching until the umpire said, "Okay, TV timeout's over. We can go."
But he was left-handed too.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Job, so.
But as far as hitters, after every pitch, taking a little walk and clearing their head. Really? You didn't do that before you stepped in the boxes. Prepare yourself. Why do you need to walk around? Derek Jeter was awful about it, walking around timeouts and, his hand up all the time. And I know Buck Showalter was screaming at him about getting in the box and let's play. Sometimes it's annoying. And, we had, I know when I played Raul Mondesi, his rookie year. Oh. Especially Dodger Stadium when it's like a half a mile from the batter's box or on deck circle to the batter's box. It took forever. I mean, it was like we were singing a song to him. Get the F up there and hit. Let's go. It took him forever, and it was annoying. And finally Lenny was bad too, but
Lenny was bad because he wanted everybody to look
at him. Yeah, Lenny wanted all eyes on him, but.
We also have the soundtracks, right? All the music,
Yeah, walk-up music. Got to hear 2 minutes of my song. Holy crap!
Well, is there a difference between watching it, because in the stadium that's all great theater, right? But on TV, is it playing? Because there's a difference. They're not even. I think Major League Baseball is correct saying, hey, we're not looking just to shorten the games. We want just more action happening more quickly.
Well, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it feels like television has become, I don't have to be in front of the TV anymore to be entertained. I can watch what I want, when I want, where I want, with all of the stuff going on. Baseball, I think, like a lot of other things, has been kind of slow on the uptake. And with replay taking as long as it did, and I get it. You always hear you don't want to mess with tradition and history, and there's over a century's worth of it, which to me is a big deal. But I don't know what the answer is for that. It's fun to watch and listen to.
I know on TV, well, now you can watch it on your phone. You see what revenues are for the local regional broadcasts, tremendous. I mean, the rights are going up and up and up. So there is a certain, what you're saying, the dynamic of going against these other entertainment properties. Baseball's still very strong, evidently. What makes it stronger, or what do you think the strengths or weaknesses are of the product as it moves forward?
I mean, well, you certainly realize that baseball is such a local phenomenon, right? There's a national component, but the local revenue and how you actually develop your teams and invest is driven by that. And that was always the big thing with revenue sharing, right? We were trying to figure this out. It's like, well, if the Yankees have the Yes Network and now the Dodgers and all these, like, how does it translate when you're trying to share revenue when you've done all the sort of local work to raise money? But that's a big driver, and you realize, like, we talk about doing our games, and sort of, all right, well, if you're watching a game on another network, are you going to switch over to an entire network? You're probably going to stay there, and if you're a Dodger fan, you just sort of stay in that ecosystem. So, but the strength of that, I think that's just going to enhance things overall. There's no question that the national games, still doing pretty well, and even with teams like the Royals now all of a sudden out of nowhere, all these teams have a shot, and I think that's sort of good for the game.
It's one of the strengths of Kruky because no one wants to flip the channel because you never know what he might say.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to miss.
That's ESPN's concern with you and I in the booth.
John, you have something to add?
I'm like St.
John Walsh
John.
is here from ESPN. John, you have something to add on that?
I always see the project or the measurements of it's 2 minutes and 30 seconds for local broadcast, 2 minutes and 45 seconds for national broadcast for inning breaks. But I never see a reference as what was it during the 1958 World Series? What is the actual team that the vulgar, greedy TV networks take?
Yeah,
Anyone know that? I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure what the time frame was. I know minor leagues, right? A lot of people do minor leagues as a minute 15 or a minute 30, I think it used to be, and I don't know when that shifted exactly for national TV in the major leagues.
I think there's a recognition, though, on the players' part that without TV, the sport dies. I mean, you think about, listen, playing in Boston and in Philadelphia in '93, but in Boston, we were literally the Sunday night game every week. And I'm not whining, but you have to understand, when you play Sunday night baseball on the East Coast, it's an 8 o'clock game, and it's your Red Sox-Yankees, which means it ends about 1:30 in the morning, which means you shower and you're on the bus on the plane to Anaheim by 3:30. I mean, every Sunday. But it's the rating. The people watch, and that's at the end of the day, that's what you play. You play for the fans. And TV's just been, I think it's come a long way in a good way, in a lot of good ways.
Well, that's what Jorge Posada one Sunday night was complaining to me about. You have us on every Sunday. And I said, you want to rectify this situation? This is when I first started ESPN 10, 12 years ago when the Royals weren't any good. And I said, you want to rectify this situation? He said, yeah. I said, good, go sign with the Royals. See how many times you're on Sunday night. And he goes, no, I'm good here. All right.
Well, that's it. Will people, almost it comes down to like red zone versus watching the game. I'll have red zone on, and I know my wife will walk into the living room and says, hey, what are you watching? I said, oh, it's red zone. She goes, but I want to watch the game. Meaning watch it unfold in front of you. Do you think people will still spend 3 hours watching the game, the baseball game, or is it going to go more toward a quicker version of that?
But everything's about instant feedback now, right? I mean, again, entertainment, I can watch whatever show I want to watch, just click on any channel, any station. So that people want to be gratified instantly, and that doesn't line up with baseball's not that way. It's always been, again, a timeless sport, and it's one of the sports that's a whole lot more enjoyable to play to some people than it is to watch. And I think that gets back to the other point where you were talking about why is baseball still what it is. I always felt like it was the one major sport that everybody that bought a ticket had played. I don't think you say the same thing for hockey or football or basketball, but everybody, at least when I was growing up, everybody played baseball. And they sit in the ballpark and they go, wow, how hard is it to catch a fly ball? Or how hard is it to hit that? Well, it's really, really, really hard. No matter what Skip Bayless says, it's tough. It's next to impossible to do.
Well, that's actually, the commissioner had mentioned that, saying that, to get people back out on the field. I mean, when we were growing up, I don't know if I'm talking for all of you here, but maybe we're close to the same age, we were all out playing baseball. You went out, you walked to a field, right? You went to a field with a couple of your buddies. You played half field. If you were lucky and you got everybody, you went to a full field. That's just not happening now, right? No,
that to me is what the biggest thing I've seen since I have younger kids coming up and playing in Little League and everything is they're specialists now. I had one kid tell me who was 10 years old, my dream is to be a middle reliever. I'm like, who in the hell? Who in the hell has that dream? But he was.
Aim high.
Yeah, but all these kids are specialists now. They have their hitting coach, they have their throwing coach, their pitching coach, their fielding coach.
What's the parent?
And it's the parents think if I put $50,000 or $20,000 a year into my kid, he's going to make it to the big leagues. And I told this whole group of kids, there's 300 kids in a camp, or 120 kids in a camp, and I told them, I said, the chances of any of you playing in the big leagues is nil. 1 in a million, right? 1 in a million Little League kids actually make it to the big leagues. And I said, have a plan B. But these kids are so specialized now, not allowed to play other sports. The parents are like, no, we're putting all our money into him. I had a parent of a 5-year-old say, watch my son play, he's going to be a star. And he was playing in a T-ball league with my daughter, who was 5 at the time. And I said, you see that little girl over there? He goes, yeah, she's pretty good. I said, she's as good as your son. She will not play in the big leagues, I guarantee you that. As nor your little son, who's built like me at 5 years old. It just ain't going to happen.
Well, and it's parents. Parents
Yeah,
are the ones that are
morons.
absolutely, as a coach, it's amazing. I have to have meetings with parents before I meet with the kids and say, listen, I hate to break this to you. I really do, because I really hope this is wrong, but none of your kids are going to play in the big leagues. All 13 of them, they're going to go do something else. And, how many times, and you guys know this, have you had somebody walk up to you and say, man, I wish I hadn't quit playing in high school? My response became, no, I'm glad you did. You made the right choice, because what you're doing now is far better than what you would have done if you had tried to play. I mean, it's such an incredibly rare thing. Now, that's not to say you can't do it. I would never tell a kid he couldn't, but you kind of see those kids.
I had a parent ask me to talk to this kid about agents. I thought, what the hell do I know about them? But sure, run it across me. And I said, so how did you do? He goes, well, I was in JUCO and I hit 280, but my on-base percentage was 320, and I think I'm going to be a high first, second round pick. I'm looking at him like, are you dog crapping me? What? 280 in JUCO, and you think you're going to be a first or second round pick? I said, so I asked his father, I said, I'm coming over your house tonight. And he goes, okay, what for? I said, I want to smoke the stuff you guys are smoking. Apparently it's good.
Well, we're seeing that emphasis too is leading. I don't want to just throw it out there, but it seems like that's why pitchers, by the time they come up, we've seen it. Matt Harvey, Jose Fernandez. This seems to be the first generation of that specialized athlete, where who knows how many pitches they have in their background pitching year round, right?
Yeah, well, I still am a firm believer that when you draft a pitcher, you need to plan 18 months of timeout in the first 5 or 6 years. Because the thing that's happened for me, the biggest mistake teams are making is they're not giving these pitchers enough innings in the minor leagues. Now we're lauding guys for 198 innings or 203 innings or 205 innings. And you think about a staff that where 2 of the guys get to that number and the rest of them are at 135, 155 with the innings. I get the innings limit. I totally understand that. But I don't think that prevents, I think it delays the inevitable, which is, it's such an unnatural act you're going to break. And again, there's always exceptions to the rule. But a guy like Matt Harvey, who has outstanding mechanics, it just happens. So, I mean, you got to plan on that. And that, to me, guys that do that, I always thought that Theo had an approach that factored in all that stuff. And that's why when you look at the way he builds a club, there's never an injury that ruins everything. Because there's never one player that everything's kind of pivoting on. And that, to me, is what Billy Beane has been so great at.
Well, let me ask a stupid question then. Do we get back to a point where the kid who's a really good athlete in high school goes back to playing 3 sports, doesn't have to just be a pitcher year-round and play, off-season leagues, rec league, the travel teams and all that? Because it's only, 20 years ago where the best athlete would go right from his football, right, to basketball.
Both these guys,
to baseball.
I can't speak to them, I wasn't, but both of these guys were phenomenal athletes. Not baseball, phenomenal athletes. And then, you can joke what you want about Kruk, unbelievably athletic, great defender, and did things. Doug was a freaking track star and ran down center field for years. I mean, they didn't just play baseball growing up, played everything. Right. And I would argue that teams are much more, I think, into getting that guy who has a rounded set of athletic ability rather than just baseball specific.
Yes.
The Aspen Institute just did a large study along with Nike and ESPN, and the study indicated that the most successful kids who played sports as children did not make a choice for an individual sport until they were 14 years old. And all the studies said the more sports you play from age 2 to 14, the better off you would be. And it's actually the study is going to go nationwide. There's a big
Good.
project around it, but it speaks to exactly what you're saying. There's actually documented proof of it now.
Yeah, I wonder if, thanks, John, I wonder if the dads and moms out there get that. Will they get that and say, hey, why don't you just play the sports, go through high school, see where we end up? Can it go back to that?
I saw an 8-year-old travel team play 125 games a year. 125 8-year-olds. If I was a parent and they said, your son's good, we want you to play on our travel team, I'd tell him to stick it where the sun don't shine, man. I played, my aspiration of playing big league baseball was when I got drafted. And I thought, wow, so I didn't even know if someone wants me to play. Holy crap. Played 20 games a year in high school.
I didn't play varsity baseball until I was a senior in high school.
Really?
We played 20 games because of the weather in West Virginia. And I didn't, it's not like, but we played in the backyard with my brothers and friends would come over and, that's how we learned to play. We didn't have to have some old guy who'd never played before tell us, I read in a book, this is how you do it. I'm like, who gives a crap? I'm going to do it this way because this seems to work. I think that's what we're, kids now, because, the way our country's set up now, both parents, a lot of families, both parents work, so they make a kid choose at a young age, what sport do you want to play? And that's the one. And we're going to do everything we can to help you. We're going to put in money. We're going to send you the best coaches and all that crap. But the bottom line is, you can go to as many coaches as you want. Kids don't know how to play baseball the right way because they don't know the basic fundamentals. They don't know. I mean, I help the high school team where my kids go to school. I said, hey, try to hit one the other way, get him over. Well, why? Oh, crap. Oh, boy.
Yeah, I mean, it's also very expensive. I mean, there's a pretty good book about the most expensive game in town, and this is a huge endeavor. You have travel squads and alternate uniforms, and I mean, there's a huge business behind feeding off of sort of these hopes and dreams, and the odds aren't necessarily with you clearly. So I think it's sort of whether there'll be pushback on that. But there's definitely an element.
And what people don't understand, a lot of people don't understand, is these travel teams, the sponsor of the travel team, he gets paid because the kids pay them and he gets the money. So it's not like he's sponsoring a team; it's just his name's on the uniform. My daughter plays on a travel softball team. She's 10. She has 4 uniforms. I'm like, how many damn games are you going to play that you're going to need all these uniforms? We have to pack them off if we go somewhere. I'm like, oh, my God.
All right, we have some questions from you now, so we have a few minutes here for the panel. This is from Dick Kramer, one of the pioneers of sabermetrics, saying, I think the 1993 Phillies as the first great baseball analytics team because you scored more runs than anyone by drawing the most walks. Did you know that's what you were doing?
No. it was never discussed. Like, it was never like, now Lenny, God love him, but, Lenny would tell you, first at bat, don't be in the tunnel my first at bat because you're going to see every pitch this guy has. And normally he was right, and normally we knew every pitch that was working, not working, whatever. But it wasn't like a conscious effort. We didn't sit around and say, hey, let's try to walk 2 times tonight. It was,
They just knew, right? I mean, for me, good hitters know and understand. I got a quick story about Lenny. We're playing the Atlanta Braves in Atlanta in the playoffs. And before the game, Lenny's talking about, it was a big game. Lenny comes up in the middle of the game and says, if Wohlers gets in tonight, you watch what happens. And I'm like, what do you mean? Because I used to ask Lenny about hitting and stuff. I learned as much about pitching, talking to hitters as I did pitchers. And Lenny says, if I get Wohlers tonight, I'm going to run the count full because he's going to try and get me to chase. I'm going to run the count full. He will try and get me out with a high fastball. If he throws that high fastball, game over. 10th inning, it was game 5, I think.
Yeah.
Wohlers comes in, faces Lenny. Lenny runs a full count. He throws a high fastball, and Lenny hits it out of the park for a home run. And if you watch the replay, he's rounding the bases yelling, didn't I?
Yeah.
Didn't I? Screaming. And then he comes in the clubhouse and he's yelling the same thing. Just one of those things. Smart hitters are just, Manny Ramirez was the same way.
This is for Doug. Doug, with your educational background, did you have any problems with baseball's anti-intellectual clubhouse culture at the time, and has it changed?
People do ask me about that. I had no issue because I was always of the mind that you learn from everybody. Everybody's bringing their experience, whether it's Billy Wagner as an alpaca farmer, and there was just there's different.
Doug is what we call an outlier.
So I was always fascinated by everybody's background and experience. So I grew up in a town in New Jersey, Teaneck, New Jersey, which was really early pioneer in integration. So I was always with so many different kinds of people. So I was very comfortable in a major league clubhouse, especially with the diversity. And so, no, I had a great time.
I brought this up on a show once. I said, Doug Glanville's Ivy League educated. I went to a JUCO in West Virginia, and we have the same job.
This is for Curt. Curt, with new technology, pitchers can be diagnosed with injuries before they are injured. If you had this technology, would you pitch differently?
No. I mean, I don't think that there's any. I think you can water down. I think you can slim the chances of possibly getting hurt to some degree. But I don't think there's anything that you can do to stop. If you're good, if you're a power pitcher, I just think Nolan Ryan, again, exception to the rule. It's just guys that are power arms will eventually need to have something fixed.
It is amazing, right? With like Brady Aiken, when they did the number 1 pick and the Astros did the MRI, and they said, well, all right, well, this isn't working. Even that's perplexing to me because it was working, right? It's not going to work. It's going to break down. What are your thoughts? Like, I'm still confused on where that lands.
How many times have you, and I'm sure position players, it's a lot different than pitchers in the sense, how many times have you had a physical? I had a physical one year, had an MRI, had the same physical the next year. MRI looked exactly the same, and the second year I didn't know until after the year that I had a completely torn labrum. So I mean, it's such an inexact science, and it's so. Will Carroll's as good as anybody I've seen at talking about analyzing baseball-specific injuries, but it's something that you just have to accept and plan for.
Another question here, and Curt, you can start on this. If you were a player with the analytics available today, what things would you look at and highlight to try to gain an advantage?
I was always in my books I had on base percentage, and these were eventually it became all stats against me because I had enough time in the big leagues, I had enough at bats. And so I would have on base percentage against me. I would have the amount of at bats, the first pitch swings per at bat, because I always had to add a percentage to a number. Like, if Doug Glanville swings at 33%, which he swung at like 93% of first pitches, I always upped it by 10 or 15% against me because I threw a lot of strikes and guys got aggressive on me early. So I always wanted to find out. For me, it was all about tendencies. I want to throw a ball when you're swinging and a strike when you're taking. It's just up to me to figure out and know when those moments are. And then you react. When the game starts, everything changes. Everything changes because I'm pitching. I faced Doug in Arizona, and he's leading off the game. And, I mean, he's an athlete, but Doug's not exactly a big dude. So first at bat, I throw a fastball. And the one thing I didn't want to do was throw a fastball above the belt. Doug was a pretty good high fastball hitter. I let go of the ball. And before it's at the plate, I can hear Todd Pratt on the other team yelling off the bench, and he takes me deep to lead off the game. And he's yelling. I'm thinking, oh, my God, how did that just happen? Next at bat, he comes up. My first thought was, hey, you know what? Keep the ball down below the belt. I let go of the ball. It's high. I know it as it's going to the plate. I hear Todd Pratt yelling again, and he hits a second home run off me. So it doesn't matter how much preparation you do.
Right.
Ultimately, it comes down to execution.
What about you, Doug? With all the tools, what would you go after?
Well, I'm certainly fascinated on the defensive side, but one thing that's been interesting, you think about Baseball Reference, for example, and when you sort of look at the pitchers you've had success against and the ones that you didn't have success against, there's kind of a pattern. There's sort of a pattern. Like, I love fastball pitchers, power guys, velocity, Woody Williams guys that threw it up in your eyes. That was a high ball guy. And then there was guys like Derek Lowe, who basically the best I could do is hit a ball off my ankle because of his sinker. It was so good. So I think over time you start to realize that there's certain matchups that work well. And I had that game-winning hit in 2003 playoffs, and that was a sinker. And 9 times out of 10, I don't even hit that ball even close to fair. It was just that was sort of an aberration. Mm-hmm. But generally, those matchups are so critical. And Curt knows, like, as well as anyone, that certain guys that you play well against and you just hit well, it's just sort of, there tends to be sort of a pattern to it.
Arm slot? Or, could you study pitchers? Vince has talked about this before, Vince Gennaro, about the big data available to see arm slot, and then, again, having a little list created for you to see this is the repertoire, this is the arm slot, this is the velocity, that could maybe group some of these pitchers in for you?
Yeah, well, there's no question that, you think of guys, whether it's Tim Lincecum or some guys with very eccentric motions, you realize that, okay, there's a timing mechanism. We faced Hideo Nomo. That was a nightmare because it took so long to figure out what is he doing. He's got the splitter. But there's nothing like repetition. There's nothing like it. And of course, they're adjusting off of you quickly. And that's where the sort of sabermetrics brings it all together. The speed at which you can make adjustments and identify patterns is really like light years ahead from where I was when I was playing.
All right, here's another question. This is for the whole panel. And maybe, John, you can start off again. You're calling games every Sunday night. Which players do you see today looking at analytics the most in baseball?
Do I know if they're looking at him?
Yeah, no, which? Yeah, they're asking which
I'll
players.
tell you a story, and I'm not going to mention his name. There was a pitcher last year who was told by the manager, the catcher puts up 4, we're going to intentionally walk you. He didn't want to do it, the pitcher. So the manager went to the mound. He said, what's going on? We need to walk this guy, set up a double play with runners on second and third. And he said, but if I walk him, my whip will go up. To which the manager said, if he hits a double in the gap and 2 runs scores, the whip's going to come from something else. But I think that's, again, you can take all the statistical data, the video data, it's all about execution. And, look, we all know what the data is on Mike Trout. He struggles with pitches above his belt. But why does he hit 30 homers, and why does he, drive in over 100 runs and hit close to 300 and win MVPs? Because a lot of guys, you're not gonna be a productive player by hitting the pitcher's best pitch. If you're waiting for his best pitch, you're screwed. You hit mistakes, and that's what they do. Mike Trout doesn't miss mistakes. That's why he's better than everyone else. Miguel Cabrera doesn't miss mistakes. That's why he's better. So you could take all the data you want, all the information on how to pitch Mike Trout, Miguel Cabrera, but with Curt, his execution. He had good stuff, but his execution was impeccable. And like he said, when he missed twice to Doug hit home runs because he didn't execute. That's, to me, is more important than any statistical data. Because if you say, okay, he has trouble with the breaking ball down and away, how many pitchers can throw that consistently? That's where you have to, as a hitter, I always lived on mistakes. If they make a mistake, I got to hit it. If I don't, I'm done. And I knew that.
I think Moneyball, the movie, there was one overriding message, which was you had to drag front offices and scouting departments kicking and screaming into the new age. Right? I mean, the days of, well, to my eyes, he's a great baseball player. For the most part, you need those guys to confirm some things. But I think that the game has proven statistically to be a lot less random than I think people think outside the game. And you can imagine if the gulf between scouts and the front office was as big as that was, that gulf between the players and the front office is a huge one. So I don't know players that do it a lot. I don't think it's something players would brag about. I mean, I think it's still a very macho atmosphere in the clubhouse. So telling everybody you're really good at numbers, I don't know that that's something you want to spout out in the clubhouse.
You don't think that's changing with the younger players? Looking at stuff?
I think the methodology at which guys are getting good is changing. I think the analytical things that they do is video, and I think the club can bring numbers to you that are going to help you be better, and I think that's working. But I don't think it's something that it won't be like batting practice. I don't think you're ever going to have that profound of an impact on players because ultimately you have to go out and physically do something that very few people in the world can do.
Let me ask you one last thing. What do you think, Doug, start with you? StatCast, again, with the player tracking that's going to be in every major league park this year. What are you looking for? What do you think it'll bring?
Well, no, I'm excited once again, especially on the, you talk about the defensive side, and I know the efforts during the World Series. But, positioning is proven to be so critical, and the adjustments you make off of that and the talent that you put. I mean, the Royals are the best example I could think of because the Royals, this is a team, that outfield, there was nowhere the ball was going to fall with these guys. I mean, they were incredible. Gordon, top down, the speed, the way they executed. So I think it's creating a sort of a versatility of how you can win ball games. You realize that I thought the Royals were a great example of that, right? They didn't strike out and they didn't walk, which was interesting. But they played impeccable defense, they ran the bases, and they got the bunts down. So I think you'll see, evaluators being able to see a lot of dimensions to how these teams perform. And so, I'm excited for it. I'm all for it.
All right. Guys, Thank you so much.
It's the audience, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if every one of these people's in a ballpark, they're going to be able to look and decipher what they're getting information-wise a whole lot different than my wife or kids. So to me, it's very audience dependent. I've never felt information was a bad thing. I always felt like you had to tailor what you were given to somebody based on the person. Telling me strike percentage is going to help me. Kruk probably doesn't want to know 99% of the numbers. And physically, there are feel and there are look guys and study guys. But I mean, the one thing I'm looking for as an analyst is a defensive statistic that is easy to get across to the fans that aren't hardcore, because I believe in defense. Listen, I've said for years Derek Jeter was not a good shortstop. He was a great player. But compared to other guys in the league, there were guys that were 10 times better at shortstop than he was. And he kept winning gold gloves, but the metrics said, no, he's not good. And so I bought into that. Makes sense. When the numbers line up with what you believe, that's even more validation. But there's got to be a way to get fans to understand why he's a good defensive player instead of his own factor.
Because he had the one year he rated as far as fielding percentage goes, but he had a five-man rotation that they made every start, and they were veterans. And when you're with the veteran pitcher, it's easier to play defense behind him because he can throw it kind of where he wants to. So it's easier to defend. And Derek didn't have a lot of range, but the one year everyone got hurt, and he had a bunch of young kids pitching. And now all of a sudden he's out of position. He's thinking, okay, they're supposed to throw his pitch down the way. It might run down and in. He hits it in the hole between short and third when he was shading up the middle. And now you think, oh, his range is bad. If you don't have pitchers that execute your pitches, your defense can look bad. And when you look at the Royals, they made up for it with unbelievable, like Doug said, their outfield, unbelievable athleticism. They can make up for mistakes by your pitching staff just because of athleticism. And, when you have average defenders, you better pitch to where the scouting report says to pitch and where they're playing, or else you're going to give up a lot of hits.
All right. Great stuff. Curt Schilling, John Kruk, Doug Glanville. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, guys.